All right, I'm live. Good evening. This is Father Tim. It is Tuesday evening, the 10th of August, and we are live on YouTube. There is my sound check. We are also shared onto Facebook. Thank you for joining us. Tonight, in our time together online live, we are continuing our reading of the Gospel of Luke. Please do take a moment to post a greeting, share a comment. Let us know that you are here with us as together we read from Luke. Good evening, Don and Linda. So, last night we started into chapter 15 of Luke's Gospel. We began the 15th chapter with a return to parables. Jesus told the parable of the lost sheep, of the one who goes after the one who is lost, leaving the 99 who are safe to find the one who is lost. And then we read the short little parable about the lost coin, the woman who searches diligently for the one lost coin that she has misplaced. And there is great joy when she finds it. Tonight, we resume with another parable. And of all of the parables in all of the Gospels, this is probably one of the most well-known parables. It is the parable of the prodigal son. So let's begin our reading. Chapter 15, verse 11. And he said, there was a man who had 2 sons. And the younger of them said to his father, Father, give me the share of property that is coming to me. And he divided his property between them. Not many days later, the younger son gathered all he had and took a journey into a far country. And there he squandered his property in reckless living. And when he had spent everything, a severe famine arose in that country, and he began to be in need. So he went and hired himself out to one of the citizens of that country, who sent him into his fields to feed pigs. And he was longing to be fed with the pods that the pigs ate, and no one gave him anything. Let's take a look at this first part of the parable. Keep in mind what this son is actually saying. it's not just greed. It's not just that this younger son wants what will be due him in due time. And it's not just that he wants immediately what will be due him at a time to come. It's worse than that. Because keep in mind, when is that due time when the son would get this inheritance? It's when the father has died. When the father's estate is divided up. And so, in a real sense, make no mistake about it, that this son is, in fact, wishing his father dead so that he can have his father's inheritance. It says volumes not only about the son, but this also says volumes about the father, that the father indeed did divide his property between them, his two sons, and allow the younger son to leave with his inheritance. It'd be interesting to know, by the way, just exactly how much does this younger son go away with. Keep in mind that the custom was that this was not, in all likelihood, an even split. Keep in mind what we know of biblical practice from the Old Testament, that the firstborn son got a greater inheritance than any of the others, usually a double portion. So probably what happens here is that the younger son is sent off with a third, and the older son remains home with 2/3. That part doesn't really matter a whole lot. It's just an interesting note. And the younger son takes what is now his and goes to a far country where we don't know. And he squanders all this inheritance in reckless living. And then a famine comes. And great is the need of this young man. Desperation sets in. And we know that because what does he do? He goes and he works feeding the pigs. Remember what the law and ancient Judaism thought of pigs. No good Jew would have touched one, alive or dead. And yet here is this young, desperate man who has squandered his inheritance, his lifetime treasure, in the fields, feeding the pigs, and even longing to eat what they are eating. How desperate this young man must be. But when he came to himself, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have more than enough bread, but I perish here with hunger? I will arise and go to my father, and I will say to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Treat me as one of your hired servants." And he arose and came to his father. Sounds like a good plan, doesn't it? This young man realizes that even the servants in his father's house have a better condition of life than he has at this present moment. He knows he's not worthy to go back as a son. He hopes that maybe he will be allowed simply to be the servant, no longer part of the family, but at least be able to survive in some dignity and with some honor, not as a member of the house, but as a servant of the house. It sounds like a great plan. Only, as we will now see, that plan doesn't quite play out in this parable the way that the young man thought it would. And he arose and came to his father. But while he was still a long way off, his father saw him and felt compassion and ran and embraced him and kissed him. And the son said to him, Father, I have sinned against heaven and before you. I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father said to his servants, Bring quickly the best robe and put it on him, and put a ring on his hand and shoes on his feet, and bring the fattened calf and kill it, and let us eat and celebrate. For this my son was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. And they began to celebrate. The mercy and the generosity of the Father is beyond belief, beyond words. It's truly amazing. Just as the Son has done unthinkable things in his past, now the Father is the one who does unthinkable things. He runs to reconcile himself to his Father, to his Son. This was not something that someone like this man would do. Run? To say nothing of running to one who wished him to be dead so that he could have his share of this man's possessions. And the father will not hear at all of the plan of this son to be a servant. He doesn't hear it. He doesn't accept it. He doesn't even acknowledge it. He just simply embraces him and reconciles him as his son that was lost, but now is found, as one who was dead but is alive once more. And he restores him to his place as a son, putting on him a robe and a ring and shoes, sandals, and throwing a feast to celebrate. And we should take this parable to heart, because this parable is our story. We are the prodigal son, and the Father is God. We are not worthy even to be servants to God, but God embraces us and reconciles us as sons and daughters, and gives us a place at a banquet, at a feast, in a family. And when we see that, when we can actually see it and apply it to ourselves, it's then that we can truly be in wonder and awe of this parable and not end up being like the older son, whose part in all of this we will now read. Now his older son was in the field, and as he came and drew near to the house, he heard music and dancing. And he called one of the servants and asked what these things meant. And he said to him, your brother has come, and your father has killed the fattened calf, because he has received him back safe and sound. But he was angry and refused to go in. His father came out and entreated him, but he answered his father, look, these many years I have served you, and I never disobeyed your command, yet you never gave me a young goat that I might celebrate with my friends. But when this son of yours came, who has devoured your property with prostitutes, you killed the fattened calf for him. And he said to him, son, you are always with me, and all that is mine is yours. It was fitting to celebrate and be glad, for this your brother was dead and is alive. He was lost and is found. The father is filled with mercy, but the elder son is filled with judgment. This is not right. And how many times have we seen this play out in the church? You know, among those who are cradle believers, who have never experienced coming to the church or departing from the church, those who struggle to see themselves as the prodigal son. But sometimes even those of us who have had that prodigal son experience forget it. And when we see others treated as the prodigal son who receives mercy, we forget the mercy we have received ourselves and fall into judgment and condemnation of our brother or our sister. How we need to remember that mercy is always gift, it is always grace. And it is, by the way, not only for the one who has departed and returned, but it's even for this one, this elder son. How many of us, if we were the father in this situation and knew that our older son in a moment like this was furious and refusing to come in and partake in the celebration, would just leave him to be angry by himself and just simply delight in the festive celebration? But in the mercy of the Father, he goes out even to his oldest son to show mercy even to this one, who, let's be honest, doesn't deserve that mercy any more than the younger one. Mercy is grace and gift for this one too, including us. It's a wonderful parable. It's one that surely should make our hearts joyful. That ends chapter 15. We jump into chapter 16, and now we go from a very familiar parable, a very comfortable parable, to one that is also filled with mercy, but in a different way. And the ending message of it might just seem a little odd to our ears. Let's read. He also said to the disciples, there was a rich man who had a manager, and charges were brought to him that this man was wasting his possessions. And he called him and said to him, what is this that I hear about you? Turn in the account of your management, for you can no longer be manager. And the manager said to himself, what shall I do, since my master is taking the management away from me? I am not strong enough to dig, and I am ashamed to beg. I have decided what to do so that when I am removed from management, people may receive me into their houses. So, summoning his master's debtors one by one, he said to the first, "How much do you owe my master?" He said, 100 measures of oil. He said to him, "Take your bill and sit down quickly and write 50. Then he said to another, "And how much do you owe?" He said, 100 measures of wheat. He said to him, "Take your bill and write 80. The master commended the dishonest manager for his shrewdness. For the sons of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own generation than the sons of light. And I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of unrighteous wealth, so that when it fails, they may receive you into the eternal dwellings." There's a significant change in the accounts by this manager. 100 measures of oil. There's a footnote here that indicates it's about 875 gallons of oil. And the shrewd manager cuts that in half. 100 measures of wheat, between 1,000 and 1,200 bushels. That gets cut down to 80%. Which, if my math is right off the top of my head, it's like 800 to a little over 900, somewhere near. There's one that I'm missing somewhere here, isn't there? Oil, wheat. My wife is saying 960. I guess it's just those two. Okay. So, and the interesting thing is, the master, when he discovers that this is what this dishonest manager has done, whom he has dismissed, this is the manager's last act while being dismissed, the master commends him for this shrewdness. How do you think that'd go over in today's world if this happened today? Do you think the master rather, would commend a manager whose last act would be to cut the accounts due him in either half or 80%? I think most business folks would say today that's foolishness, absurd, and they would probably take him to court to try to recoup their losses from him and not just accept it. But that last word of this parable is one that seems bizarre, doesn't it? As something that we proclaim as the word of the Lord, the gospel of the Lord. And I tell you, make friends for yourselves by means of unrighteous wealth, so that when it fails, they may receive you into the eternal dwellings. I don't really have anything to say about that other than just to say that catches your attention, doesn't it? Especially given the fact that this is coming from the mouth of Jesus. One who is faithful in a very little is also faithful in much. And one who is dishonest in a very little is also dishonest in much. If then you have not been faithful in the unrighteous wealth, who will entrust to you the true riches? And if you have not been faithful in that which is another's, who will give you that which is your own? No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. Well, that makes verse 9 a little bit less odd. There is certainly wisdom in this. If one is faithful and prudent with what is not theirs, well and good. If they are not faithful with it, what makes you think they will be faithful with what they are not accountable to with someone else? You cannot serve God and money. Remember that we just read about priorities and Jesus teaching not long before this that those who are disciples are called to set their priorities in such a way that nothing else comes first. You cannot serve God and money. God comes first. Everything else comes after. And everything else comes in the context of living for God. And as we will see when we pick up here tomorrow, this gets Jesus in trouble. Because you see there, the beginning of where we will pick up tomorrow, the Pharisees, who were lovers of money, heard all of these things. And since they were lovers of money, everything that Jesus just said that we read tonight was offensive and foolish. We'll pick up there at chapter 16, verse 14 tomorrow night. But for now, friends, let us close our time together with prayer. But first, let me say good evening to Mom and Francis. Let us pray. Ruler of the everlasting kingdom, Prince of peace, champion of the despised. You are the king. You make a cross your throne. You wear a crown of thorns. You call your subjects friends. Help us to take up our cross and to hunger and thirst for all that is good. Then will your kingdom come on earth as in heaven. Look down, Lord, from your heavenly throne. Illuminate the darkness of this night with your celestial brightness. And from us, the children of light, banish forever the deeds of darkness. God, our judge and our teacher, let us not waste time when the day is done in guilt or self-reproach. Give us rather the courage to face whatever has been, accept forgiveness, and move on to something better. Amen. Lord, remember us in your kingdom and teach us to pray. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you, friends, for joining us tonight as we have read from Luke's Gospel. Good evening, Lorraine. We will be live tomorrow morning at 8:30, and we will pray morning prayer together. And then tomorrow night, we will continue where we left off this evening with the reading of the Gospel of Luke. Blessings to you all, friends. Know of my love and my prayers and my thanks for you and our sharing in the gospel. Good night.